Listen. What's going on? This is episode 14. I am your host, the dark-skinned Mongo Santa Maria, aka the dark-skinned Khalid Muhammad, aka Show 14. Today we are going to talk about percussion and pulse, and really focusing on what I call the extra. Last week we talked about how the kick and the snare will keep the track moving. This week we are going to be talking about everything else, drum or percussion wise. This week it's all about the details. Some will be obvious, some will be more subtle, but either way it's all about the details. So with that being said, let's get started. The first song we are going to talk about is 96 Bars of Revenge by JME. He's a grime artist. In this one, the kick and what I'll call the extra thuds, they keep the track moving, but I really want to focus on the thuds and everything in between the kicks. Because like I said, the kick is the foundation. Kick and snare are usually the foundation. Everything that happens in between kick and snare is what's gonna color the track. The little details are what's gonna make it very interesting. So, in this song, the kick and the extra thuds keep the track moving, and it's kind of like a call and response between the two. In this track, focus on those extra thuds because that's like the main attraction, and that's kind of where, as a listener, my ear was first drawn to this track. And that's to me, like I said, that to me is the main attraction of this track. Because when you think about it, in regards to the kick, the thuds giving it that cinematic sound, the strings and all the instruments, the melodic instruments, they're kind of cheesy, but they're good cheesy, and they are processed well. But the thuds really give it that like video game final boss or climax of an action movie type feeling. And that's the key. Doing those little things like that can make all the difference in a beat. Next song we are gonna look at is by Lalo Rodriguez. I am not going to pronounce the name of the song because I do not speak Spanish, but this is an Afro-Cuban song. And as far as Afro-Cuban, I think the details in Afro-Cuban music are the best to train your ear to pick different things out. With Afro-Cuban music, all the percussion instruments are pretty much on detail. So being able to pick the different, like the timbales and all that kind of stuff out is good training for your ear. So when you're listening in a more modern track, it'll help you notice the subtle differences in whatever percussive instruments the producer chooses to put in, and it will help you discern what's what and what is interacting in the track. So as far as the groove goes, in Afro-Cuban, the bass is what's giving it its foundation instead of like a traditional, or not a traditional, but like in modern music, kick and snare is the foundation, in my opinion. But in this one, the bass is providing the groove. And the congas contribute to the foundation a little bit too, because they do hold to a steadfast pattern, and the congas don't ever change. So first, at the beginning of the song, it's congas, bongos, and timbales. So as far as texture, at the very beginning where it's just percussion, you can hear it clear. The timbale player is playing on the shell of the timbales, so not the heads. The bongo player is not playing many open tones. He is holding his hand on the head of the bongos to dampen the sound. And then the congas is playing a pattern of open hits and dampened slaps, which is like it's a set pattern in Afro-Cuban music, which is why I said it contributes to the foundation. To help you figure out what's going on in an Afro-Cuban track, as far as percussion goes, You should really watch a video of like percussion players, either one at a time or all playing together, and you can see when their hands are striking the instrument, so you can see exactly what sound they're making. But I'll also try to help you out and give you some hints about how each instrument sound. When the timbale player plays on the shell of the timbales, the drumstick that they use to play is very thin, and the shell of the timbales is metal, so it's a very metallic, light, very bright sound. The congas are pitched lower, and they have a very warm, round sound to them. And the bongos are very high pitched. Later in the song, there are more cowbells. There are 2 cowbells. The person who is playing the bongos, what they'll do is when they go into like a different section of the song, they'll put the bongos down or pick the cowbell up, and they play the cowbell with a clave. And the timbale player has a cowbell mounted to the instrument. So how you can tell between those 2 cowbells is usually the person on the bongos who's playing the cowbell with the clave, usually they're playing more time, like quarter notes with little things in between. And usually that cowbell is a little bit more louder and a little more, it's a little less metallic, because a clave is more, it's bigger. And so usually when you hit a cowbell with a clave, it's more of a thud, more of an impact. The timbale player is using the timbale drumsticks, and those are thinner. So again, it's gonna be a brighter, more metallic kind of sound. The importance of this song is it's a good one to be able to pick out different sounds, but also the patterns can be applied to whatever music you make. I personally put Afro-Cuban patterns in my beats to give more motion to the song, make it a bit more interesting. And when you layer these patterns with non-Afro-Cuban sounds, sometimes the sounds don't mesh as well and fit together as well as like a bongos, timbales, and congas, and they'll stick out evenly, and it will add to that organized chaos. Because all these patterns fit together, whether you're playing them on those type of percussive instruments or in a DAW, the patterns fit together, so it'll never sound bad, but it will give you that more high energy type feeling to it. And many producers even put like straight bongo loops in their songs, and it gives it that more high energy sound. One in particular I can think of off the top of my head is that on T.I. versus T.I.P. there's like an interlude or something where like it's just like a pad and some bongos, and then a beat comes in. That's a good example of how bongos, a straight bongo loop can fit into the song and just give it a little bit more energy. Like I said, you can put the patterns on different instruments. You can put a Cascera pattern on the ride cymbal and closed hi-hat. You can put a clave pattern on the open hi-hats. And clave, if you don't know about Afro-Cuban music, clave is an instrument, clave is a rhythmic pattern, and clave is like a time signature. So you'll hear people use clave a lot, and they can mean any of the 3 things. Afro-Cuban has some real cool rhythmic patterns, and once you get them down, they're very easy to plug and play. And also what you can do after you get comfortable with them, you can start making variations and adding your own little flavor to them. There is a slight vocabulary you have to learn and get comfortable with, but once you know what you're looking for, you can learn a few, get cool with a few patterns, and put them in your music, and it'll add to them. I'll give you some vocabulary of patterns you can look for, and I might put them in the comment section. But some patterns and some vocabulary: Tumboa, Cascera is a pattern, Montuno, Merengue, Clave like the instrument, and like I said before, it's also a pattern. Also, there are different dances, and the dances refer to the tempo. So like cha-cha-cha is a slower tempo of Afro-Cuban music. You can also look up patterns for specific instruments, and that's a good one too. Like you can look up Cascera on cowbell, You can look up conga patterns, you can look up bongo patterns. All that stuff is good to look up and good to learn. So that should get you started, and there's a whole lot more to Afro-Cuban. It's very intricate, and you can definitely learn a lot from it. Once you know the patterns, you can do informed listening and go back and listen, and then you'll really be able to absorb what's going on and add things to your arsenal and know when and when not to put them in. Next song is by Tiwa Savage called Malo. Now this is an African tune, so you can compare and contrast the Afro-Cuban. So on this track, the main kick is obvious and it hits mainly on the one and a few other times, but it really stands out and you'll be able to hear it clearly. And the snare is a rim shot that plays a clave pattern. Another recurring theme is that in this song, the producer isn't doing that much. All he is laying down a groove. He'll take things in and out, make additions where they need to be, but the overall track still stays interesting and it has a good groove and bounce and it keeps moving. And the last song is Naughty Ride by Wiz Kid. The main thing I want to point about this is that clap pattern. I call this clap pattern the hopscotch. That's the feeling it gives off, like that school children playing concentration or something like that. Like it's a real bouncy, playful pattern. And that's the kind of energy it will give to your track. The way you do this and make it come across well is you have to pitch down the claps that aren't accented. So before you make the pattern, clap to yourself, and then your job is to mimic how you clap in real life to make the claps in the program sound realistic. So if you notice when you're clapping, the claps that are non-accented, the non-loud claps they sound lower. So in the dog, you pitch down the non-accented claps, and then you also can manipulate the velocity in your dog. That's how you make it sound real. Also, a good detail in this song is the snare loop under the main groove. Putting loops under grooves is a major key if I haven't said that before. It plays into that controlled chaos and adds to that texture like I said before. So that's it. As always, listen to this in the description. Hold me accountable. Let me know what I can do better. And thank you for listening.